laundry. Dirty laundry. That's what we're all about. Jason Marlowe, good morning.
We're like a laundromat, but it's a radio show.
There you go. This is Down and Dirty, WMNF. We are thrilled to be here. Hold on one second. Twist that knob. Follow the wire down there. Technical difficulties already. Anyway, I'm John Dingfelder. This is Down and Dirty WMNF. We are thrilled to be here on this bright, sunny, and slightly chilly Friday morning. Jason Marlowe is on the board.
I am back. I'm glad to be back.
Glad to have you.
Had a little hiatus.
Irene is answering the phone.
Thank
a little
you,
later,
Irene.
we will take your calls, 813-239-9663. If we can squeeze them in. We have some great pontificators here today, including my good friend and former law partner and all-around political gadfly, Tom Skerritt. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. Thank you, John.
Did you get your headphones straightened out?
I did.
It's great to have you. And we have the wizard of politics in Tampa, Mitch Perry.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, Mitch. Mitch, of course, is no stranger to WMNF. It would take us an hour just to recap Mitch's career, but Mitch will be on the next hour with his motley crew. But he's graced us with his presence this morning.
We've got some double dose of Mitch Perry today.
We've got some interesting topics we're gonna run through on Down and Dirty today. We're gonna talk about the new Ethics Commission statute. And one of the reasons we brought Tom Skerritt in is Tom is former chair of the Florida Ethics Commission. We're going to talk about Andrew Warren, the court decisions and most recent decision by the 11th Circuit against Andrew Warren. We are going to talk about what I like to call Florida goes to Washington. We seem to be sending half of our Republican elected officials to Washington as of next week. And then finally, we're going to talk about Ashley Moody becoming our new senator. So where do we begin? Tom, let's talk about the Ethics Commission. Tell everybody what the Florida Ethics Commission is, what your role on it was, how many years you did it, and did you have fun?
So much fun. Ethics.
Believe it or not, it was more fun than you would think. And I was on the Ethics Commission from 2004 to 2008. I'm a Democrat, but I was appointed by a Republican. And the reason is because...
Who was that, Jeb Bush?
No, it was Johnny Byrd.
Oh, Johnny, okay.
Yeah. And I was reappointed by another Republican, but that's by statute. It wasn't because they liked me. I don't think they did. But you have to have a certain number of Democrats, a certain number of Republicans, and an independent.
God forbid a little bit of balance and fairness.
It was, it was refreshing. It may have been the last time I experienced that. But
and what do you do up there in Tallahassee in the Ethics Commission?
You consider cases of ethics violations from everyone from the janitor of a public school to the governor, and everything in between. And so it's changed. That's what we're here to talk about. Used to be that the commission would receive a complaint, and the staff would take a look at it, kind of like a judge, and they would decide whether, if you take the allegations as true, it constitutes a violation of the ethics code, right? And if they decided it did, then they pass it on. They would do an investigation, and then with that result, they would pass it on to us.
So a lot of the cases that came in would get pretty much dismissed at the staff level, just as sort of unfounded or that sort of thing. There was a process there to do that, correct?
Right, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I don't have the statistics on it, but a significant number of cases never made it past the first cut, if you will.
And did you think it was a fair process, the Ethics Commission, a good group of people looking at these cases with an open mind?
I did, and I was...
Were they all lawyers?
No. Didn't have to be lawyers. There were quite a few lawyers, but we had doctors, we had business people, we had educators, we had, women that worked in the house, in the home, I don't know what we call them now, domestic engineers or whatever.
Homemakers.
Homemakers, yeah. So it was a great group, and again, it was politically, evenly divided, so that you had no choice but to work with each other because there wasn't a block.
So it's my understanding, Tom, that a case could come in, like Jason Marlowe could read about some county commissioner who was having some issues. He could read it in the Tampa Bay Times, and he could have raised the case, even though he wasn't part of it. He could have raised the case with the Ethics Commission, just sort of bringing it to your attention, and then the case would move on from there, correct?
Correct. And that is what has changed, okay? Because what we have now, as of last year with the new statute, the process has gone from one component to two, right? The first, when I was there, the component was, let's take a look at the allegations, and again, if they are the basis of a real ethics complaint or a real ethics charge, and mind you, they would parse it. It was if they had 4 charges and only two of them met the standard, the other 2 got dismissed.
Only 2 would move forward. Now, Mitch Perry,
Yeah.
you wrote about this for your
this past the Florida Phoenix.
For the Florida Phoenix, thank
Yeah.
you. And how did you even hear about it? How did you even know about it? It's like sort of obscure.
Well, this past week was the first week of the legislative session, in terms of not the regular session, but the committee weeks, right? Which
Okay.
there's going to be about 5 weeks. Although there's going to be a special session now, of course, in a couple of weeks. But and so this was the Ethics and Elections Commission or committee had their first session, the Senate this past, I think, Tuesday it was.
Okay.
And so I wanted to follow that, and I saw on the agenda was they were going to be discussing the bill SB 704,
Which was from last year.
Yeah, that passed last year, went into effect, I believe, in July. And as Tom says, the big change here is the fact that no longer hearsay is no longer allowed. Okay, so which is critical. And my question for Tom is when you were on the commission, do you recall how many were the complaints that you looked at and either went with it or not? Came from the public, because this is no longer going to happen now unless, again, you have firsthand knowledge. That's the key change from the law, from the new law, basically, is no longer can you just say, if you're reading the paper about something that just smells to high heaven in the Tampa Bay Times, and you want to, send something into the commission, go, hey, you guys got to look at this. That's no longer going to be allowed.
Now it has to be like, I observed Commissioner Joe Blow doing such and such, or something more firsthand.
Exactly. And so, Tom, to you, how significant is this change?
Very. Let me give you an example. Let's assume that, people are in, I'm going to call it the housing department, so we don't confuse it with a real department. And the head of the housing department is taking bribes on the side to get favorable housing permits. This is observed, or this is learned by a very low-level person, a woman with, 2 kids, unmarried, barely subsisting, and so she doesn't want to pull the trigger. So she goes to her supervisor, and the supervisor says, okay, do we have any documentation? No, we don't. The supervisor now decides whether to take it to the commission. Well, in past days, they could. And they said, I have knowledge, and now it has to be personal knowledge. Okay? Now the lower level employee has got to make the charge, and that is unrealistic to expect them to do.
I wonder what constitutes firsthand knowledge. I mean, if I go over and read those files, do I then get firsthand knowledge, or you don't think so, Tom?
I don't. That's the question, right? That's what the staff now has to decide, because if you have personal knowledge, that is going to be obviously the first decision. If you don't have personal knowledge, but you have something akin to it, then that's a discretionary thing. If you go to the the evidence code, there are certain exceptions to hearsay. So how do we deal with that? There are certain things that sound like hearsay, but they're not hearsay, and so it's really opened a can of worms. And you still have to have the requirement met that you have to have allegations which, if taken as true, would constitute a violation of the Ethics Commission. Taking a bribe would be one of them.
Thank you. That hasn't changed, yeah.
I mean, are there other alternative routes for people to go in terms of, making these ethics claims? Or was this really the place to go for the whole state.
It is. And there are around the state, there are baby ethics commissions.
Right.
Which
Jacksonville, Miami-Dade. We don't have any in the Tampa Bay area, though.
Well,
do we?
the city of Tampa has an ethics code and has an ethics commission that never meets and never does anything.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not, because I know Hillsborough County does not.
Yeah.
You're saying Tampa does
City
have.
of Tampa, it's in the code.
Okay.
But nobody really ever takes advantage of it. Or if they do, that quote ethics commission that's in the City of Tampa, statute code never seems to meet, and they never seem to take up anything.
Interesting. Yeah.
And let me just say that the baby commissions have jurisdiction over their own municipal codes.
Right.
Okay. They don't have any power over the state. They're quite frankly very limited. A lot of people think that the Florida Commission is very limited.
Right. There's been a lot of criticism about them over the years.
Right. And
now they're even more limited?
Right, because they're not going to get as many cases because people are going to be too afraid.
Yeah, Mitch, what do you think the impact is statewide of this?
Well, right. I mean, to me, and again, not being inside, that's why it's so interesting to have Tom here talking about it from the inside, because I know that, again, over the years, over the decades that I've been here in Florida, I've seen some really hard-hitting investigative reports that have led to the ouster ultimately of people. I'm trying to think of, I don't know if that was, you were no longer there when Ray Sansom, the former Florida House Speaker, his demise, basically. There was, Alex Leary was the Tampa Bay Times. He was the one who did all this really great reporting on that. I believe that was about the Taj Mahal, as they called it back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what the case was. But again, I know this over the decades. It's been investigative reporting that has led to a lot of ethics commissions who would not have known about this anywhere else, right? And this reporting, by the way, hopefully will still continue to go on. I mean, it's a whole issue about, the strength of journalism in Florida right now. But where will that go? People will read something that might be, again, smell to high heaven. Now, I guess the commission themselves can still do this. They may not have firsthand knowledge of it. I think that's kind of an interesting. I don't know if they can. Did you guys ever initiate things on your own?
So I'm glad you mentioned that. We asked for the power to self-initiate over and over and over. I was on for 4 years. We asked legislature every year, and they said no. And I think that it just scared them, the legislators, because then we would have some real power.
Right.
And so we didn't know. We were denied, and they've been denied ever since. Now it's just going the other way. Now they're shrinking the number of cases that will be accepted and processed.
Who do you think initiated this, or do we know who initiated it?
I can tell you how it kind of began last year. At least, I remember happening. Former Senate President Kathleen Passidomo talked about how they wanted to put some limitations on how long these investigations went because they felt that some were just going on too long.
All right, that's probably reasonable.
Yeah, and the case was about former Pinellas County State Senator Jack Latvala. Right. His situation there, he was caught in the quote-unquote Me Too movement in the fall of 2017 in terms of a situation. And so that went on, I think, until 2022.
Wow.
It went on for a real long time. And in fact, I think I have my notes here. I got someplace where but she basically talked about this. Yeah, so last year she was talking to reporters and said, she mentioned that the Latvala case, he resigned in 2017 after 2 investigations accused him of sexual harassment. But a separate probe by the Ethics Commission dragged on and didn't close until 2022. So that was the impetus that we heard about last year. This kind of was added on as they say, quote unquote, the process went on, and you will see this happen in Tallahassee.
As my mother says, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I've heard that expression before, but yeah,
and that's exactly what they did.
Right, because in fact, if this had been early on that this is the intention, this is what happens in Tallahassee, though. So and again, we're in that period right now. We're 6-7 weeks before the regular session begins. Although again, we're going to have a special session in 2 weeks, week and a half, and there's going to be some explosive legislation being potentially passed that we've seen from Governor Ron DeSantis float out this past week.
Florida will lead the way in immigration. Or deportation reform or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we've massaged this pretty well. Tom, you got the last word on that one.
Let me play devil's advocate. There is a reason why these changes are being made. And one is when I was on the commission, especially when I was the head of it, I went around the state and I gave speeches. They would ask me, tell us about the cases that you have, just in a general term. And I said, well, a third of the cases were cases where you just said, what were you thinking of? They were just guilty as hell, and those were not very hard, quite frankly.
Sometimes probably settled.
They do settle after we find probable cause, boom, because then they're going to go to an administrative judge where they're going to air all their dirty laundry, and then it goes up to
Dirty laundry?
Yeah. Then it goes up to the governor, and then the governor has to, say why he or she does this or does that. So there was that third. There was a third at the bottom. It was like they were just using the commission as a smear campaign usually against their the folks they were running against.
Sure.
And it was just like, it was so obvious.
Right.
There were no facts. So it was a little slipshod in that direction. And then you had the third in the middle that they were real cases. There was nuance, and there was people that could see it both ways. So this is an attempt to, sort of shore up the bottom, right? By making people who are bringing complaints have some personal knowledge.
But it's yet to be seen, and it's probably going to take another year or two to see if any cases can meet that standard.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're also going to go, I should say this also, they're going to look back at before the law, and when effect kind of retrospectively grandfathered in, if you will, taking these cases out, where they're going to look at cases that they're already looking at.
Pending cases.
Pending cases, right. And again, see, was this come from somebody who had personal knowledge or not?
I bet a lot of them will get chucked out.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
All right. Well, listen, if you're just tuning in, this is Down and Dirty. We're WMNF. We've got Jason Marlowe over here on the board, and with all of his brilliance.
Yeah, observing the Supreme Court has just upheld the TikTok ban in a 9-0 vote.
Oh, really?
Bye-bye TikTok.
Oh, my God. I
Where
don't know if we have time to talk about it, but maybe
sourdough bread recipes now?
Maybe we will. We've got Tom Skerritt, attorney and political gadfly. How's that for a title?
I hate it.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. I mean,
right.
but that's
I hate it. You come up with a better one.
Political ingenue.
Ingenue. I'm sure Linda Skerritt would agree with that completely. We've got Mitch Perry, who needs no introduction. And let's talk about Andrew Warren. Speaking of Tallahassee travesties, where do we start?
Marshall Pétain.
I don't even get the reference, Jason.
Vichy France. Oh, my God. Come on, man. Make the historical connections.
Well, I think, John, we should start where it just ended, which is a week ago today. Okay, so maybe go backwards, right? So the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals out of Atlanta basically ended Andrew Warren's odyssey in the courts since he was suspended by Ron DeSantis in August of 2022. They called his challenge moot because he, of course, lost his bid for re-election in November. Andrews and his attorneys were still fighting for back pay, basically. Okay, so maybe he knew he wasn't going to get his job back, but nevertheless, arguing that the legal arguments were still with him, and so he still, there was still a reason to keep this case going. We should say that it had been, January of last year, almost I think a year ago, where the federal court, if I believe correctly, kicked this back to the appeals court, and the appeals court. Well, okay, now I'm getting confused. He's here. But basically, the big outrage, and I think John Hill from the Tampa Bay Times wrote about this week.
Did a beautiful job. I was going to read it.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Let me read a piece of the Tampa Bay Times editorial by John Hill. So he's speaking about Judge Hinkle, who was the federal district court judge who issued a 59-page ruling basically blasting the governor's office, saying this was all pretext. Andrew Warren didn't do anything wrong. And should have been reinstated. He said in his 59-page ruling, Hinkle painted a devastating picture of the hack operation in the governor's office that led to Warren's ouster, finding that the record includes not a hint of misconduct by Warren, and that Governor DeSantis had made the allegations as a pretext to justify suspending Warren and violating his free speech rights. I think that kind of puts the whole thing in a nutshell. Tom, you're an attorney. You and I have done a lot of 1983 work, violation of civil rights work over the years. You're probably still doing it. And, what do you think? Did the 11th Circuit error?
It just makes no sense. I mean, what they did.
They can't reinstate. That's obvious. I mean, the term is over. They can't reinstate. But
in regular cases, in regular employment cases, and you know this because we handle them together, they allege that they were improperly terminated, right? And then time goes on, and they can be reinstated when it's possible.
Those are regular.
But some of the times they say, I don't want any part of this. Yeah. I'm out. But you're going to pay me for what you did to me.
Back pay.
And back pay, front pay, attorney's fees, all those things. And here they said, Hinkle's opinion was horrific towards DeSantis. And he said, you violated his rights, and there's nothing that you did was fair. But I can't put him back to work because I don't have that authority. So it goes to the 11th Circuit, and they say, yes, you do. And it's a 3-judge panel, including one Trump judge. Okay, and that Trump judge was wrote a footnote that was has been used over and over again. So, but they said, now you do have to make some other findings. Some additional findings. So they sent it back down there
to Hinkle.
And Hinkle sat on his
hands. What I understand, though, I believe, though, is that there's a 3-judge panel, you said, Tom, but then DeSantis appealed that decision.
Right.
And so...
He wanted the en banc. Right.
And they sat on it, though. Mm-hmm. And that's to me, and that's what I think John Hill wrote about in this piece recently, was that, you guys decide on it now. Okay, it's up to you now what you're going to do. And they sat on it. And they said, and Andrew Warren got in the race in April. This is, I think, back in January, February of last year when this was going back and forth between the 11th Circuit and the federal court in Tallahassee. And they... in terms of everything that had been ruled by Judge Hinkle, it seemed like this would be the time to go ahead and reinstate him. They didn't want to do it. This 11th, they said there was no timeline, right? This is the way you guys know you're in the court system. In this case, there was no deadline for them to do it. So then they wait. The election happens November 5th. Susie Lopez defeats Andrew Warren by 5 points. And they wait quietly a couple months later. And then last Friday, they announced, okay, this thing's over. He lost. Boom. It's over.
Yeah, and I'll finish up with John Hill here. John Hill, Tampa Bay Times editorial board, he says, whether you're a constitutional scholar or an average 6th grader, answer me this. How in America can someone violate your constitutional rights and there not be a remedy? Aren't free speech and due process the foundations of our democracy? Isn't the right to seek redress in the courts a basic guarantee? We need to either change the textbooks or the people in charge. Justice delayed is justice denied, as Andrew Warren said in his statement. He said, I'm embarrassed for our justice system, as anyone should be, who believes in the rule of law and the American values we teach our children.
John, can I read also from Andrew's attorney? It's a short statement here. He wrote last Friday, too. He said, quote, at every turn, Mr. Warren asked the federal courts to act with utmost urgency in his case. He filed the suit in August 2022, less than a month after being illegally suspended. Before the Court of Appeals, he filed numerous motions seeking to expedite not only the court's consideration of the case, but also its issuance of the mandate once that court concluded the trial court had erred. The decision today, this is last Friday, this case is now moot because the court itself allowed the clock to run out, is a sledgehammer, not only to the First Amendment, but also to the rule of law at a time when our nation urgently needs unfractured confidence in both.
Yeah, Jason? What do you think?
I mean, listen, ultimately the reality is this. They handicapped a person who we picked. I mean, we voted
for... handicap or
kneecap? Both. They took out any of the body parts that allowed his legs to move, they removed them surgically. And I mean... ultimately, we're the losers because we have somebody who the governor installed now being in charge of justice in this county. I mean, I guess you could argue she's won an election. I don't know if you would argue that she won that fair and square given the circumstances, but we're the ones that lose out. I mean, Warren was a leader in combating some of the really bad behavior that we've seen within the city of Tampa. There's a reason why we had Department of Justice investigations into behavior of Tampa Police Department. It was good that we had a state attorney that was looking into that with a cautious and judicious hand. And now we're probably not going to have that because part of the reasons that DeSantis cited for his removal was that he wasn't up enough on bicycle thefts and petty thefts.
And one of the reasons that Warren was not very popular with the mayor, with the sheriff, the sheriff standing up there with the state attorney and
stabbed him in the back.
Yeah. Interesting state of affairs. Tom, last word on Andrew Warren.
Travesty. I mean,
It's really sad for our justice system, right?
It is. I mean,
because you and I have always believed, I'm going to speak for you, Tom, we've always believed in our justice system that it either shouldn't be political or it isn't political. And here it is.
Oh, very political. I mean, and I don't want to be alarmist, but one of the reasons why I wanted to be a lawyer was because the lawyers historically have been the last bulwark against any threat to democracy. And now I see that it is being bashed and wonder what's going to happen.
And perhaps all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Well, yes, especially the Supreme Court.
Yeah. All right. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Down and Dirty, WMNF. We will take some calls if you want to join in the conversation, 813-239-9663. Our next topic, Ashley Moody, the former Plant City Strawberry Queen. Where's she headed, Mitch Perry?
She is going to Washington.
Ashley Moody goes to Washington. Sounds like a movie.
Indeed. She is our second female senator in Florida history. It hasn't been really noted in the press coverage history. Paula Hawkins.
Paula Hawkins. She was kind of infamous.
Why is that?
Tom?
That goes before my time in the 80s.
I just remember she was kind of rowdy.
Maybe.
Jason, look her up and see what you can get us on Paula Hawkins. I do remember she was sort of feisty.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that she was known most of all because she was the first, right?
Oh my God, that hair. What is this?
All right, let's not. We're going to get calls. We're going to get calls and be called a bunch of chauvinists, probably from our wives.
Oh
but
it's
anyway,
very dynasty. It's giving.
It's the 80s.
It's the 80s.
Wow.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right, Rita, give us a little more substance there, Jason. All right, we'll circle back.
Well, again,
Ashley Moody.
Ashley Moody. So this was something not really a surprise, right? I mean, in terms of the candidates that Ron DeSantis had to select from, and he mentioned several yesterday. He talked to a couple of Congress members, Corey Mills, Kat Kammack, Cord Byrd, he mentioned, the Secretary of State, who he was talking to about this position.
Ashley Moody was sort of lined up to be governor.
Well, she was absolutely in the mix.
She was Attorney General over the last, how many years?
6 years.
6 years.
She came in the same time as DeSantis in 2018, November of 2018. Beat Sean Shaw from Tampa here in 2018. Demolished Aramis Ayala for re-election in 2022 by over 20 points. Very in lockstep with Ron DeSantis. I think, I don't want to, diminish her by calling her an ideological clone, but I mean, I don't think, the way that she has done so many lawsuits against the Biden administration, and we know that DeSantis has been so critical of the DeSantis administration, whether it was on COVID restrictions, and so much on immigration, of course. So it makes a lot of sense in terms of where Ron DeSantis was at on this. I mean, he feels very good about this selection.
But she must have had support from Trump too. Otherwise,
well, we have not heard that.
Happened, right?
But
I don't think DeSantis.
But let's go back a month. Okay, supposedly Laura Trump was the person that the Trump people wanted.
Oh yeah, well,
right. Yep. And that's
bizarre. Sort of a bridge too far.
Yeah, it was nuts, and it was never going to happen. And so a couple weeks ago, Laura Trump withdrew her name when she put her name in there in the first place. I mean, nobody took her that seriously. But because
I'd like to withdraw the name that I added.
Well, right. I mean, this is where you talk about with Trump. The whole MAGA Florida thing is like, where did this come from? She remember a year and a half ago, Laura Trump staying with her for a moment.
She's married to
Eric Trump, Donald Trump's son, and considered running for Senator of North Carolina, where she's originally from. But she really hasn't had like a big political background other than leading the Republican National Committee this year, put in there in place because she's a Trump. But anyway, so that was never going to happen. So I think that the question about whether this meets Trump's seal of approval, I'm sure he's fine with it, but I don't think that Ron, who, by the way, is closer to Donald Trump than ever apparently these days. They went golfing, was it this past week?
Oh, cute.
Yeah, no, I think this is instructive because this is, and not to lead away from Ashley, and we should say with her for a moment, but in terms of Ron DeSantis really pushing for all this immigration legislation immediately, right, because Trump is coming in on Monday, and he's got a solid partner in Washington who's going to back that up in Ashley Moody, for sure.
Yeah. Tom, what do locals think about Ashley Moody? She is a local gal.
She is.
We got Pam Bondi as going up there as Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, local. I guess Pam grew up in Temple Terrace. Ashley grew up in Plant City. What you thinking?
I think that it will benefit our area.
How so?
I think that they're going to try to bring home the bacon, just like all the politicians do. They want to be able to say, well, I did this and did that, and that specially, benefited, MacDill Air Force Base or this or that. Whether it's accurate or not.
I'm trying to think of when the last time the Tampa Bay area had a U.S. senator. I can't.
Yeah, in fact, it's great. Maybe
can't
never.
think of one.
In fact, Kathy Castor in a press release yesterday mentioned that actually in applauding.
Was she going for the appointment?
No, but she did. But she did. I think it would stand out in this partisan world that she kind of. I'm going to bring up the statement here. Actually,
while we're waiting, I want to give a shout out to our friend Stephanie Pointer, who's being honored by Kathy Castor right now at 10 o'clock in the morning as a hurricane hero. So congratulations, Stephanie Pointer. Mitch, what do you got?
I'm still looking. I'm sorry.
Still looking.
So I have your
Jason,
information.
what do you got on Paula Hawkins?
Paula Hawkins, she's notable for getting into a very testy altercation with Frank Zappa.
What year is
Shout
this?
out Frank Zappa. Oh, I don't know. This is during the 1985, during the record label hearings. And then late.
Were you born in 85?
No, I'm -3 at this point. So then later on, I guess during her tenure, she was known for what was called the Steak in Jail luncheon. She had a very, very fancy luncheon in which she decried food stamp cheaters and said they should get mandatory jail time.
Okay.
And I guess this went...
See, I'm telling you, she was rowdy.
Well, I mean, it was infamous, and it's part of the reason why she lost her re-election by 10%. It's the largest margin of defeat. It was the largest margin of defeat for any incumbent senator in 1986.
She was Connie Mack or something?
Bob Graham, the late Bob Graham.
Yeah. So I found the statement. So Kathy Castor said yesterday, and John, you're right about Tampa Bay area. She said, quote, for the first time in history, a U.S. senator representing the state of Florida will hail from Tampa/Hillsborough County once Ashley Moody is sworn
First
into
time
Senate.
in history.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Kathy wrote in her own press release here, who was the first woman elected to represent Tampa Hillsborough in the U.S. Congress. The first woman, Kathy was. The seat here we have here,
Sure.
Jim Davis and Sam Gibbons, et cetera. But yeah, so that is something that has. I'm just thinking about it right now. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of a Tampa Bay area, there's never been one in the United States Senate.
Well, and let's hope she brings home the bacon, Tom.
I hope so too. I mean, I have a lot of reasons to doubt it, but let's give her the benefit of the doubt and let's see how she does. I will say.
Well, MacDill should be a big supporter of MacDill.
They all are, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but
Feed the military-industrial complex. It must eat.
When she ran for Attorney General.
She had been circuit judge for about 10 years.
Right.
And, and shocked everybody and sort of jumped.
Yeah.
In 2006, she was 31 years old, the youngest judge ever.
Youngest judge,
Yeah.
Yeah. And, her family were all Democrats, right?
Traditionally.
Her dad, no, they were all Democrats.
Did they stay Democrats?
No, obviously not.
Her dad, by the way, is 80 years old and is still a judge right now.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Kim Moody. Good man.
He is
federal,
a good man.
federal judge.
Very conservative, but very fair. I mean, I always am happy when I have
Ashley's mother, must have the big heart in the family because she was with Bay Area Legal Services for her entire career as an attorney.
Right.
Carol Moody.
Right. Wow. So I went to a party, a fundraiser, and because I told Ashley, I said, Ashley, I want to support you, and you're a Republican. I don't typically do that, but I'm going to come to your fundraiser. Well, this ended up being a very high-end fundraiser I didn't know, and came in there, and I got so much grief by all my Republican friends that said, Tom, are you lost? Why are you here? And I said,
You were a spy.
No, I wasn't. Anyway, she promised me. I said, are you going to be Attorney General for, the Republicans or for the special interests? Or are you going to be Attorney General for everybody? And she said, everybody. So I gave her a big check. And I have been disappointed because I think that she has, in a lot of instances, she has obviously been the Attorney General for special interests for the Republicans.
Well, that $25 hurts, Tom.
No, I'd like to ask you, Tom.
This was not a Dingfelder contribution.
Hoisted by your own petard.
I would like to ask you this because I'm sure you familiar with, of course, Pam Bondi. In terms of her, Attorney General, we know her through 8 years of her tenure. How would you compare the two in terms of, just how fair they were or how
political? What, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
I think that, first of all, Pam Bondi is a neighbor.
That's what I'm saying. Again, these people that are these Republicans who've got a lot of power here.
Been with her, she's very, very charming. Okay, that's just so obvious, and it's hard not to like her. But I put her in the same sort of category as Ashley Moody because, again, she seems to be the candidate for special interests, just consistently. And the thing that I've been most frustrated with is that I don't think Pam Bondi or Ashley Moody ever understood that they don't work for the governor. They are independent of the governor. But they appear to be folks that do whatever the governor's bidding is.
And that's a serious concern about Pam Bondi now going under the Trump administration as his head, the Department of Justice here.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, DeSantis even complimented Ashley Moody, I think, in the last day or two when he appointed her to be U.S. Senator, and he said, Ashley's been with us every step of the way.
Absolutely.
Which is sort of indicative of what you're saying, Mitch. We've got Dave in Tampa. Let's see if Dave can add to the conversation. Good morning, Dave. What do you want to talk about?
Hey, guys. Yeah, great topics today, great conversation. So, I don't think you guys have touched on it yet, but DeSantis wants to appoint his chief of staff, James Uthmeier. I don't know if that's
Uthmeier, yeah.
To be the attorney general in Florida to replace Ashley Moody.
Yeah, what do we know about him?
Well, I think he's been, a loyalist for DeSantis for years and relatively young. And I think he'll be maybe even more on, DeSantis' side than Moody was,
Really? I don't know how you... no respect. I don't know how more you can do it than
how you get in those pants any tighter.
You're right about that. Good point. No, I just think it's... and I'm curious about who replaces the chief of staff, and I have a feeling it could be Glenn Gilzine, who's without a job right now after not running for the
Orlando
position of Orange County Supervisor of Elections.
Interesting.
All the controversy there.
How about the Department of Natural Resource person who's screwed up and tried to give away all of our state parks? Maybe he's up for chief of staff. Hey, Dave, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate the call.
We should say that Uthmeier did manage Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign.
Oh, what an excellent job he did. How many counties did he win again in Iowa? Could you just real quick to refresh the listeners? How many counties did he win in Iowa?
Tell us, Jason.
0.
Oh, right.
0 counties. How much money did he spend?
How much, Jason?
I think it was like $108 million.
So what? How does that work out per county one?
It's not great.
Also 0.
The math is not mathing.
Tom and I are lawyers. We're not mathematicians, but it sounds like
Captain
zero
Big White Boots.
Well, it's something you could argue in his favor. Again, if you're wanting to look at effectiveness, is that he helped lead the anti-Amendment 3, Amendment 4 campaigns, which was Ron DeSantis was his biggest thing.
And those were effective.
Yeah. They did the job. They used taxpayer money to do it, but they nevertheless got it under 60%.
Excellent job subverting our own governmental organizations and using our own taxpayer dollars.
You're still complaining about the marijuana vote, Jason.
Oh, no, I'll be fine. Don't you worry. My jar's still full. I'm just pissed off.
Well, and by the way, the campaign is reignited here for cannabis for 2026.
I have the capacity for empathy, John.
Well, listen. All right. Let's see. I'm a little
frozen in time.
I'm slightly out of it today. All right. So our last topic is Florida goes to Washington. We bumped up against it a little bit. We talked about Pam Bondi, but boy, they're going up in droves. We've got Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. Tom, I remember you got me invited by our mutual friend to go chat with Marco Rubio when he was. What was he in the House?
Right, Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the Florida House. Yeah. And your friend, the Republican attorney,
Steve
Burton.
Thank you.
Oh, the late Steve Burton.
Yeah. I was a Democrat on Tampa City Council, and Steve Burton, through you, Tom, invited me, and he said, "Come meet this guy, Marco Rubio. He's incoming Speaker of the House, and he's just here in Tampa and wants to meet regular people." And so I went, and it turned out, like you, I was the only Democrat at the table of like 20 Republicans to meet young Marco, and he was 26. He was very
young.
Was he 26 at the time? Yeah, very young. Seemed very naive.
Maybe a little older at that point.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. he was polite to me. Nobody else was, but he was polite to me. But I just thought, wow, where's he going? And here he is, Secretary of State.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it's going to be a tough position for him. I mean,
what's the over/under in him lasting 4 years?
Yeah, it'll be. It's
take the
between
under.
six months to 2 years. That's what my view is.
Remember when Rex Tillerson was one of the best and brightest? Everybody remember him?
Yeah.
Well, you can look at the same thing that Attorney General with Pam Bondi, though, right? You had Jeff Sessions, I guess it was initially, and Bill Barr. And Bill Barr ended the administration. There was nothing.
Consider Bondi and Trump have a lasting relationship that predates even Trump's ascension to presidency. So I think she has. I would take the over
on Pam Bondi.
So
I'm taking the under on Little Marco.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have a problem with the water bottle on television, and it's just going to be very embarrassing.
So Marco Rubio, it's interesting. The question is, why would he take it if he knows perhaps he's only going to last a year or two, and he had a very strong position in the U.S. Senate with a lot of seniority?
Well, I would say you're one of 53 now Republicans, one of 100 Republicans. He's done the Senate for, how many? 2010 he's been there.
When he showed up.
Yeah, exactly, Jason. But he's been there for 14 years. He did his one run for president, and theoretically, I guess he could still do it.
He's going to come off as Secretary of State and run for president.
Well, 2028 is going to be a bloodbath.
Well, I mean, whether he does or not, I think it's an ascension for him. Absolutely. I mean, he's done really all he can do as U.S.
Hillary,
Senator.
it's like Hillary, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that
Hillary was in the Senate. Obama put her Secretary of State.
And he's 53. So Marco's still got plenty of time after. Depending on how it works out, though, you're right, though, Tom. You can't say that automatically because depending on what happens under his, the world's a dangerous place out there, and he's going to be representing the administration, as Secretary of State. And I don't think we can really predict how that's going to go. And so I think that will dictate whether. But I think either way, he'll be fine in the private sector if this doesn't work out for him and he can't run for president. But I think that's why I think it's very understandable why when he was asked to do this, he jumped to leave the U.S. Senate.
Most importantly about Marco Rubio, being the Gator that I am, his son scored a touchdown for the Florida Gators in the bowl game right here in Tampa about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There you go.
I did not know that.
Boy,
there's a reason to support him, right? For you.
Totally. I'm jumping parties, Tom. Susan Valdez, here I come. All right. Speaking of Susie Wiles, chief of staff. What do we know about her, Mitch? Chief of staff for Donald Trump.
Yes, she has been very involved with Florida politics. Ron DeSantis had a big falling out with her, falling out.
First, she helped him get elected governor
in 2018. She also worked with Rick Scott. We should say she's been very involved with Florida politics.
And what's that lobbying firm?
Ballard.
Yeah,
Ballard Ballard Group, which is also closely tied with our mayor.
Well, also tied with.
They're outside the station right now.
Also tied with Pam Bondi, who's been working for Ballot Partners since she left.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. In fact, that came up a little bit in her hearing the other day.
It's a powerful shop, huh?
It became under Trump the most powerful. Brian Ballard was in Tallahassee. He was never in Washington before Donald Trump got in. And then he went full on and got a lot of foreign clients. Qatar, the government, Qatar, that was one of Pam Bondi's clients. That was kind of controversial. But anyway, so Susan Wiles, but she is considered, we'll see how this works out. But I would say, overall, in terms of the transition from the election in November to next Monday, it's been less bumpy, certainly, than it was 8 years ago when he got in there. And everybody's giving credit to Susie Wiles in terms of, trying to keep the trains running on track and all that.
8 years ago, Trump came in and hadn't made hardly any appointments at all. I mean, as president, you have the opportunity to make a couple of thousand appointments,
right,
and he had hardly done any. Susie Wiles, according to the New York Times, is going out of her way to make sure that they have done at least a third of the major appointments that are necessary to keep the government running.
Right, and the thing about her is she's been doing a couple interviews lately, but she pretty much doesn't care about that, right? And really just wants to do the job here. And she's a valuable asset to Trump, and obviously, she helped him in the campaign, and then he immediately first thing he did was you're my chief of staff, right? So we talked about this Florida tree of people who are coming from Florida to work in Washington. You've got to start with her. But yeah, there's so many people. In fact, and then Trump gets so involved with Florida politics, right? He's endorsed the candidates. We have these special elections in District 1, the Matt Gaetz seat, and also in District 6, which is Mike Waltz, who is the new national security advisor. Trump has already endorsed Republican candidates in both those races. We'll see if that's going to get those people victorious.
So a chief of staff doesn't have to be ratified by the Senate.
No.
But Pam Bondi and Marco Rubio do have to have a full vote of the Senate. You think either of them will face any serious opposition?
Marco Rubio will just sail right through.
Yeah.
He has more moderate views than the whole lot of them, and that's been a source of conflict for with the MAGA crowd. And it's been a source of solace for other folks in the rest of the 90% here. So he's going to sail right through. But Pam Bondi, have you watched any of it? I mean,
no, but compared to Matt Gaetz, I think she looks very good, right?
She looks good, and she's also
That's setting a bar real low.
Yeah, she's she looks good. She gives questions. I mean, answers that are not objectionable to anybody.
She dodges adequately.
She's figuring out the 14th Amendment still, but she wants to be Attorney General, but she'll figure out the 14th Amendment when she gets around to it.
Wait, what was the question? The question I heard on the radio was if you're Attorney General and the president tells you to do something that's blatantly unconstitutional, how will you handle that? And she says, that's a hypothetical. Yeah. I'm not going to answer it.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, well, God, if there's any more relevant hypothetical question to answer, let's do it.
I want to know why they didn't ask her, is it true that you postponed an execution so that you could go to a fundraiser? To me, that's sort of important.
Well, that's right. That's why I think the Democrats blew it in some cases here, because I think that I think it was very appropriate what you just said, though, John, about what will you do what Donald Trump is promising to do and Kash Patel? Those are certainly relevant questions, and she absolutely dodged them. But for the rest of the country who does not know Pam Bondi and some of the ups and downs in her 8-year tenure, I think that would have been a real boost for the nation to learn that. And one of those would have been exactly that, Tom, how she blew off an execution for her own fundraiser. I mean, incredibly embarrassing.
She stole a dog.
Well, that's a whole other issue.
She stole a dog.
Yeah, I mean,
was that Paula Hawkins or Pam Bondi?
No, it's Pam Bondi.
That would have been. I don't know if that would have been.
Does that rise to the level
dog
of
thievery? Apparently, you can become DHS secretary if you shoot a puppy. So who knows?
Well, you could though, because. Actually, you're right. She is. Kristi Noem is being confirmed right now, or nominated, or in confirmation hearing right now. Excuse me.
May I ask Mitch a question? What's going to happen to Gaetz?
Well, he's the host right now of OAN, which we can't get, by the way, in cable here in Florida or in Tampa Bay area. Well, he said the other day,
like Pornhub.
Oh my God! I don't know what they call the down and dirty here.
Dirty this morning.
Oh my! But I will say, Tom, that Matt Gaetz has told who was it, Tampa Bay Times, Kirby Wilson last week, that he is looking at running for governor. This is not a rumor. This is a fact, and I believe him because I think this is the thing about Matt Gaetz. I would not discount the idea that he could not become our governor. And by that I mean, if we have 4 or 5 people running, like we did in 2018 when Andrew Gillum won the Democratic nomination with about 33%, you had some strong candidates there, Gwen Graham.
So
and
the whole key is the primary.
Well, and that's
right. With Matt Gaetz.
Right. If he wins, because in a Republican state like this, and that's why I would think. I'm not saying he would do it. That would happen. I'm saying Byron Donalds has come out this week, congressman from Fort Miles area, and there's going to be others who are probably going to be running. So he's not guaranteed by any means. But I don't dismiss the idea that he couldn't. And that's why even last year during the Florida legislative session, for one day, it was the most bizarre thing. A bill was floated, an election reform bill that would bring back the primaries, what do you call it? We used to have 2 elections, right, in August, basically, right, in Florida until 2002. Runoff election. I mean, I don't know what you called it there. So we got rid of those, right? And so, but it was surfaced for a day, and the theory was like, because this is Republicans run everything in Tallahassee, so why did nobody put their name on it?
So for the primary, your point is winner takes all.
Right,
you can win a 33% thing. You could get 20-something percent.
But you wouldn't. You could not do that if you had the runoff where you have to have then
but the top 2.
The top 2 would have to run again
Yeah.
till somebody gets 50%.
But you're absolutely right.
Right. So that was
So
floated.
Matt Gaetz might have his little following of 25%.
Well, that's why this bill was floated for a day, and people were like, "Where's this coming from?" And the thought was, well, Matt Gaetz might run, and Matt Gaetz could win possibly. And they were thinking the bill went away because
I don't know. I think you got 37 pages coming out of that ethics report that say that Matt Gaetz can't be governor.
Well, we'll see. Okay.
Can
maybe.
we take that to the Ethics Commission?
I mean,
Can you
I'm
take it to
just
the
saying-
Florida Republican base? I mean, perhaps you can, and that would be enough to.
I just think
Yeah.
there's too many other qualified candidates that'll
Right.
operate in that space that'll raise,
you're right.
raise money because he won't
You're
be able
probably
to
you're
solicit
probably
donations.
right, but you're probably right. But he's flirting with that. But to answer your question, Tom,
I mean, he
but he's
flirts with a lot.
He's
Wait,
on
he's
cable
just
telling
gentlemen,
one every night,
Excuse
but
me,
we
gentlemen.
can't see him.
We never
unfortunately.
thought Trump would be elected the first time or the second time. So, Jason, there goes your
I
prediction.
don't know. I knew it was happening the second time. That's why I booked a trip the day after the election.
Where'd you go?
Europe. Couple weeks. It was worth it.
Why'd you come back?
I think about that every day. Every day, John. Why make me relive my trauma?
All right, we've had some fun this morning and
We have. This has
down
been
and
fun.
down
We've
and
gotten
down
down
and dirty. Gentlemen, what else is going on? Mitch, what are you talking about next door over the next hour with your motley crew called The Skinny?
The Skinny, yes, with Ben Montgomery and Ray Roa. We're going to talk about Egmont Key, which is, do you know, familiar with
Sure,
that?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we're going to talk about that and how
What's going on with Egmont Key?
what's lost is a lot of its land, actually.
Oh, yeah, the storms probably have blasted it.
Well,
There's
that
a-
doesn't
There's a
help.
lighthouse out there, isn't there?
Right, right. And as Ben described it as like the coal and the canary when it comes to climate change. So we're going to talk all about that, actually. It
That
should be
actually
really
has
interesting.
like historic significance. It's right on the other side of the Sunshine Skyway. It's been there sort of as the beacon of this is where Tampa Bay is.
Right. They say the mouth of Tampa Bay.
Right.
I've read it as described as such. Have you gone out there much?
No, but you can sort of see it from the top of the Skyway if you look.
First
if you
lighthouse
look
was completed
west.
in 1848. It was the only lighthouse between St. Mark's and Key West on the western coast of Florida at the time.
There you go.
So that'll be the subject of discussion. Next week, promote next week already. We're going to have Alan Clendenin, the Tampa City Council member, also a member of the Democratic National Committee, and the
What's
Democrats.
Alan talking about?
Well, we're going to talk
National politics.
We're going to talk about both, but I do think it's interesting because the DNC is looking for their new chair, and also the Florida Democratic Party next weekend is going to have elections as well.
Yeah, shout out to Alan Clendenin.
Friend of the show.
He knocked off Joe Citro.
He did do that, yes, a couple of years ago. But folks, please stick around here on MNF after we get done with the NPR News in a few minutes.
Absolutely. Jason, what's going on in your world this week?
Honestly,
you mentioned the Florida the Hillsborough County Legislative Delegation.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I know we have a limited amount of time, but we wanted to have Commissioner Joshua Wolstel on. We just ran out of time. Every week we keep trying and we just keep running out of time. It's
All
a
right,
real
Hillsborough
tragedy.
County Legislative Delegation met this week.
It was excruciating.
You and
It was-
Mitch were there.
Yeah,
I
we was
think.
there last Friday, and I mean, listen,
It was excruciating?
The faces in the room have changed a whole lot. I mean, just it's not exactly a friendly room, or at least as friendly as it used to be. And yeah, I mean, a lot of issues in this county. I mean, Republican or Democrat, we still got a lot of stuff that we got to fix. Our infrastructure is terrible. Traffic is only getting worse.
So the point of the legislative delegation is let's all get together
And pretend we
hold
care.
hands and go to Tallahassee and bring home the bacon.
Yeah, I mean, there's little talk of appropriations. It's far more just like.
Did the mayor make a presentation?
No, there were
board members? Yeah.
There were members of city staff there of the mayor's team, but the mayor did not make an appearance.
Did they speak? City staff?
I do not know. I was not present.
They
for
probably
that.
do things behind the scenes.
But there were some senior staff from the mayor's team that were there.
Yeah, how about Hillsborough County? Was your buddy
Several-
Josh there?
Oh yeah, Josh was there in his orange polo, and a couple other county commissioners, County Administrator Wise, Deputy County Administrator Greg Corbadell.
Yeah. Tom Skerritt, Hillsborough County Democratic Party. What's going on?
Oh, probably more than we have time to talk about. So we'll say that for another time. I will say that this is significant to me. I've started doing yoga. And
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I need to join you.
You do.
He says looking over at his body.
He took one glance at my stomach and he said,
that was a softball. You gave me a softball.
Yes,
I have to hit
I
it
know.
out of the park. But anyway,
Well, the fact that I had trouble putting on my socks this morning, I totally agree with you. I need
Socks. That's a bad start. That's really not great.
Yeah, we appreciate your candor. Thank you.
Jesus Christ.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed your presence. Mitch Perry.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here.
Tom Skerritt, Jason Marlowe, Irene, thanks for answering the phone. This is Down and Dirty. We go out with what, Jason?
I mean, we're going to do a little little Randy Newman here.
Let's leave Chicago, a little bit too rugged